Hello, I am Rebecca Alexander, aka Nima Freedom, and welcome to the Big Black Tent.
And I'm Natalie Arsenault, her trusty sidekick.
Oh, Natalie, I was thinking this week
Okay.
in terms of what's going on with Diddy and how it's floating over to Jay-Z and how
Hmm.
it's dancing behind remembering Epstein Island. It's starting to trickle towards Oprah.
Okay. As I have seen her name pop up in a couple of
Okay.
little things. I have. I have.
It's been trickling, and I know we talked about this a bit last week because you did remind me some white folks have gone to jail
They
for
have
these
gone, a
things.
few. A few of them have gone to jail. Hmm.
Okay. But there was a still big part of me, OJ part of me.
Who is dead now, by the way. He
When
died.
did he die?
He died earlier. He died earlier this week.
What?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you didn't know? Girl, shut up. Because
No.
earlier, I don't know what is happening with the death occurrence, but today I was talking to somebody and I mentioned about Colin Powell, and they were like, yeah, he died. I was like, he did it? And they were like, yes, he did. And
No way.
I was like, no, he didn't. And it was like in 2021 or something crazy.
Really?
Yeah, it was a minute ago when Colin Powell died. And I was like, how did I miss this? But yeah, OJ died April 10th in Las Vegas.
I did not even hear that.
As you
That,
mentioned his name.
that lets you know he's not part of my algorithm. You know how
You
it's
see? Mm-hmm. That's
it's
correct.
catered to your interests.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's crazy. Has it been on apparently I don't
It was
watch the
all
news
over.
like
Because, people had this different reactions to it, right? There were people
that.
who were
Okay.
like, good, he gone, ding dong, the witch is gone. And they had other people that was like, well, no, this is the human life, all this other stuff. And they were like, oh, but the carnage, whatever, all the things. And so, yeah, all of that. So there was lots of mixed reactions to his death.
Jay's gone. Man, okay, so I do remember in 1995,
Mm-hmm.
when it was very divided between the black classmates and the white classmates of what we thought about him.
Yes.
You know?
Sure.
And I do remember just a black man not wanting to go down. It wasn't about whether he did or not. I think it was symbolism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the end of the day, I feel like if that's the life you were living, you deserve the consequences for what you were
That's
living.
exactly what you did. Whatever you did, child, you signed
You
up
did.
for it. Okay.
You know? And at the same time, um, that old school part of me, like, oh, don't want to keep a black man, almost like a
Mhm.
protective,
Yeah.
maybe even enslaved part of me that
Mhm.
wants to protect the black man at all
At all
costs,
costs. I know.
even if it's to my own detriment, my children's detriment. I think that program within us black women, that's still very thick.
Well, and I wonder if it is about wanting to protect Black men at all costs, or is it because we are judged as a collective, right? So, when the news comes on and they talk about somebody who shot up the park and killed out, you just be like, I hope it's not a Black person. I hope it's not a Black person. I hope it's not, right? Because it is the collective majority that will judge you, will judge that single person and apply it to the entirety of a race. So I wonder if it is more that, right? Like, would we,
Self-preservation
like, if,
in.
yeah, like, would we be as invested in the outcomes of individual Blacks and feeling like we need to protect them, or we just got to support them, or we got to stand up for them, or whatever the case may be, if we weren't being viewed under the microscope that what one does, all must do.
Ooh, ooh, you're describing like a Borg mindset. That's the Star Trek in me. You are describing a Borg mindset where we have been formed into a hive, so to speak, right? That hive mentality, and we function because that's the way that we were corralled. That's the way that we were trained, and it's been safer
Mm-hmm.
that way. And then the part where part of part of I feel like a tug in my chest because to step out of that does not feel safe.
Okay.
Step out of
Okay.
that. If that right, if that's what I'm used to, then to step out of that, well, then I feel like I never forget. I forgot what congressman said this, but he was talking about how one black man joined the Congress and somebody else joined the Congress, and it was now three of them, and there were three on the floor, and he was trying to stand over you. He was like, because if they shoot all of us, then we gone. Like
Right.
that mind, don't make a group.
Don't
Like, and
make a group.
this was in the early 80s.
Mm,
So yeah, that concept of right, we
yeah.
have to move a certain way. Um, and maybe that generational trauma that keeps traveling down, at least for me, is fear of stepping out of that,
So
stepping out of
what do you,
that.
when you say a fear stepping out of it, what do you, in your fear, right? In your fear, not in your rational mind, because I most fear to me, the majority of fear, not all fear, but the majority of
Mhm.
fear is generally based in some level of irrationality, right? Because
Right, right.
it's likely not going to happen or whatever, right? But in your fear mindset, what
Mhm.
are you thinking when you're like, no, I don't want, I can't step out of this. This isn't, I shouldn't step out of this. Like, what do you think are the drivers behind that mindset?
Crazy. I think it is some type of deep program of protection because if you think, well, if black people don't have my back, if white people don't have my back, because those are the only two groups that belong in my fear paradigm. Sorry, everybody else, black, white. Then, right,
Right.
do I have, even though I'm supposed to be, right, a piece of God, as Gracie says, even though I'm supposed to be this all powerful, autonomous being, do I have what it takes to thrive if I'm not belonging to one of those gangs, groups, races? It's a it's a thick program, and I'm just realizing saying this, but it's a very thick way of thinking and way of being. You belong in this one or this one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think our identity, I'm going to assume, I'm going to talk about all black people right now, I represent all of us right now. I'm, our identity has been so much about struggle,
Mm.
right? So much about trauma in a way of surviving that the fearful parts of me is like, what am I without my struggle in surviving?
Mm.
I'm not that white thing they created, nor am
Right.
I the black thing they created.
Right.
So stepping out as this autonomous creative being, my human self doesn't want to be alone. Doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. I wonder if hearing you say that made me think of like, adopted kids and how they sometimes, want to go and find who their real parents are. And um that feeling, I wonder if that's the same feeling somewhat of the black experience, right? That like, you know, you don't really belong here and you don't really belong there. Um, but you don't really know where you belong because you don't have you have nothing that is a guiding light that suggests, you know, your lineage or heritage is from said point. Like, there are lots of people who be like, oh yeah, I reign from Ireland. My great great grandfather came over on the whatever and he was Irish or whatever. Like that doesn't exist for many of us, not all of us, but many of us. Um, and so I wonder if that's some of that is a contributory factor.
Of wanting to belong. You and I grew up in predominantly white schools, integrated spaces.
Yes.
And one thing I have not, there may be, but one thing I have not investigated or heard of is the traumatic consequences of being fully integrated. Um,
Man, it's a
per
lot.
the civil rights, like we shall overcome, and then we integrate. So,
Right.
um, I've yet to see the movie,
Lot.
Beyond Ruby Bridges, who I do not read to kids anymore. Sorry, Miss Bridges, but I do not hold that book up as a book of heroism. Heroism. I would
Mhm.
near do that to my 6 year old
Mhm.
child that I have now.
Mhm.
Um, Integrate her into hateful spaces, no
Mhm.
matter what spaces they are.
Yeah.
Um, I often think of, to me, that's how that felt growing up. I was in all white schools. I lived in an all
Mhm.
black community. I talked white. I don't know, survival mechanism after I joined the white school, and it was hard to feel like I belonged in any space
Mhm.
for years, for decades after.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, it's probably what a lot of Blacks, I would imagine, probably struggle with. I mean, we I grew up in an all-white neighborhood, went to all-white schools, we went to some of the same schools. Um, and it's interesting because for me, when I graduated and had to figure out, I was figuring out which colleges to go to. I applied to a lot of colleges. Um, got into the colleges that I applied to, and then had to like start making decisions. And so ultimately, I ended up deciding that I was going to go to Xavier in New Orleans. And I was like, look, I've had a white experience my whole life. Let's see what this Black experience holds. And then I got there, and then I was like, nah, I just think I just deal with the white people. I mean, like it's a lot. Like I just thought I was gonna be, how in the original Color Purple, when Celie see her sister coming through the fields and they just run to each other and they'd be like, that's right.
That was your fantasy. That was your fantasy.
Yeah, that's what I thought was gonna happen. I was like, I'm gonna get here and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be people, they're gonna embrace, we're gonna be like, what up, all this. And that was so not it.
Did
Um,
you go to black church?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Um, but I didn't really, I was in adult church, so I never went to kids church. So I don't really know what was happening with the kid side of the thing because I was in the adult church part, because they had the little, in the Black church, it was like, hey, it's time for the kids to leave. My mom would be like, girl, you stay right here. You ain't got to go nowhere. I'll be like, all right, cool. I'm gonna stay right here with the adults.
Really?
Hmm. So I was always in the adult side of things. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought that it was gonna be and it wasn't that at all. My experience was quite the converse. It was still, and I guess because and again, I think this part might speak to what you were mentioning earlier. You have this idea that um that group A and group B operate differently, when in reality, group A and group B are still people, right? They're still people. They still um have the same types of agendas and things. And oftentimes operate out of self-preservation themselves. So, it didn't feel different. It was just melon.
Whoa, wait, break that down. So, what were your challenges?
I had challenges from professors, for one, around, like I had a professor question um a paper that I wrote, and suggested that I clearly couldn't write on the level at which that paper had been written, and
Did you
gave.
tell him that you took Miss J's class?
That's what I was like. I was like, dude, what you talking about? We got AP credits off up in here. What you talking about? I was like, Miss J, child, this is, let me tell you, okay?
Okay,
Um,
I never worked that hard in college as I did in Miss
and
J's
Miss J,
senior class.
I'm like, child, you better sit down, have several seats. And so it was just, it was then, the people, like the student body wasn't, it was, cliquish and clicky and all of that. And you still had to find your circle and your people and all that when I was under the expectation that when I get there, these were all going to be my people.
Oh, whoa. Okay, so you had some
Right.
serious, okay,
Right.
expectations. You had some human
I
expectations.
had some human expectations. And so, yeah, so it was a bit of a different experience. But yeah, so
Wow. Okay.
that's where we are.
Well, that's man, that is really enlightening. I was raised in predominantly white churches.
Oh, really?
Um, mm-hmm.
That's an experience,
Predominantly white
child.
churches.
So time out. Let me just say about my one experience at a white church. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened, but for whatever reason, my mama decided we were going to go to this church in the neighborhood. It was a predominantly white neighborhood. And when we got there, they were doing they did the pledge of allegiance and the national anthem, to which, as you know, I have not stood for that since elementary school. So I was in there and I was just sitting on the bench like this because I was like, what this got to do with my God? First of all, y'all combining gods. What you talking about? So so that was my experience. And then after that, I was no longer present for that pastor could have been delivering a word from on high, and I would never have known because they started that with the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was like, boop, boop, your mic is off. So, okay, back to your experience. Like
Wow.
churches. Did y'all do the national anthem or pledge or anything like that in the church?
They did the national anthem on special occasions. There was I don't know if this was just the white church thing. There was the flags were present, the American flag, the Christian flag,
Mhm.
and the American flag. And it was a in hindsight, it was a very red state. It was a very red state church. They were heavy military, and military being the arm of God, right? So they really
Okay,
believed that.
okay,
I do remember being in the black neighborhoods, right? Because I went to majority lived in a majority black neighborhood in school up until sixth grade. I mean, no, sixth grade, Ridgegate, McCullough, one year McCullough.
okay,
So, and my sister went to TSU her first year. So I knew that wasn't the exact experience I wanted because of the resources that were so far behind
right,
U of H and resources. And most of her struggling was because of the lack of resources, which came from the structure of funding.
right.
Um, and you know, I don't anybody HBCU at least in the 90s,
Most
80s
of them
knows
struggle.
all about the horrors of financial aid, right?
Yes,
Going through the financial aid line and all that stuff. Um, so I remember that. But that the difference, it felt like a huge schism was large going from predominantly white churches to predominantly white school. And when I went to predominantly white school and predominantly white church, I nearly had a breakdown. I nearly had a breakdown of because the culture shock of what what black was in the predominantly white schools was vastly different from where I came from.
okay.
So I
What do you
was like,
mean? Like, what do you mean by that?
well, socioeconomic, like everybody I was around was uh poor. I
Okay.
just know the way to say it.
Well, okay. Okay. Okay.
We were all in it together, right? My mom would say lower middle class, but we were up, okay?
Right.
And going to the majority white schools, the black kids had money, right? They had name brands, they had Julian Berg, they had
Right.
gold. Yeah, Kohan
Okay.
shoes was
Okay.
completely different.
Are you trying to show to me because you're trying to describe me? No, I'm just kidding.
You said what?
Are you trying to describe me?
No, I'm just saying that
We did though, and they did. Yes.
it's classism. So that was the
Right.
first time,
That's
not
correct.
that you guys were trying to be classist, but it was the first time
Right. That you encountered that.
that I encountered that. And the culture of it was very different, right? Your experiences are very different.
Right.
Um, the way you be about yourself, it's just so fascinating looking back at that.
Right.
But you could clearly see in the white schools, like the grunge, the kickers, the
Right.
preps, it was so
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Um, and in the black schools, it was more like, at least where I was, South Coastal, everybody was kind of in that thing together.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I get
So, so really trying to figure out where I fit was
Mm,
really, really was really stressful as a seventh grader.
I
it
could
was
see
it was, it
that.
was stressful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I think the other crazy thing that ends up happening when you integrate, and I don't know if you experienced this, because I end up apparently this was a thing. I didn't know it was a thing at the time to date a white boy, but whenever I meet somebody from Elkins, it's the first thing they're, you that girl who dated that white boy. Like, apparently
It's a
that's
no
my
thing.
claim to fame.
I had no idea you dated a white boy. Let's be clear. I had zero idea. That's funny though, that
That's
you are known for that.
I
Okay.
am known for dating the white boy. So I the schism once again in my mind, thinking that you're so close
Oh yeah.
to white folks, and then when you get older, how that pulls
Mm-hmm.
away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know you.
Right.
Like,
I'm like that.
as you integrate into the real world, those relationships, and maybe this didn't happen to everybody, but I quickly learned that those relationships were not tolerated outside of
Right.
high school.
Yeah.
You get older. So I thought, man, then what was all that, a waste of time? So yeah, how that felt and how that moved. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the trauma of your seventh grade integration carried through the rest of your school, like through the rest of junior high, through the rest of high school, or do you feel like you figured it out, moved past it, and it didn't really bubble up in any specific way?
No, I think it definitely left a mark,
Okay. Okay.
a huge indelible mark. I think I was confused. There was no one to really explain it.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do with it, but no, I was confused for a long time in
Okay.
both worlds, especially as I got older, right?
Okay.
As you become more reproductive,
Okay.
right?
Productive.
Um,
Okay. Okay. All
right.
right.
So
So,
yeah, that it left a mark.
okay. So I think it was a little different. Um, so in kindergarten, I used to go to an HISD school because a friend like
We'll
boo.
talk about HISD later.
I know. Well, but it was a magnet school. It was a magnet school. And it was because one of the reasons was because our neighbor down the street was a teacher there. There's a black lady, and I used to be friends with her daughter, who was like a year or 2 years older than me, or whatever. And so I would go to school with them, and she taught kindergarten, and I was in her class.
Nice.
And then first grade came, and I wasn't in her class anymore. And I went to another teacher's class, and I will not say that woman name because I will not give her no airtime. But she was a black lady too, and she was horrible. She was evil mean, evil mean. So my mom took me out of that school. And this wasn't some it was an integrated HISD school. It wasn't like it was all black, all white. It was a pretty diverse population. And that's when I went to Lantern Lane. And my first grade experience there was with a white teacher. So first, this is the first white teacher, but I'd had a good experience in the old school with a black teacher, and I had a bad experience with a black teacher, right? So first grade, white teacher, and she, I always wanted to read in class, and I used to be able to do it freely when I was in kindergarten and stuff. And so, she would call on people to read, and I would raise my hand, and I would want to read and all the things. And so she apparently got tired of me wanting to read and took me out of her class and put me into a remedial class, even though I was reading on a second grade level. So she put me in a remedial class. So of course I get home and I tell my mom all the tea. I'm like, hey, my teacher took me out of the class and she put me in this other class, and I don't really know why I'm in this class and all this other stuff. So I remember my mom's conversation with me, and she said, she was like, well, because I guess my mom knew the point, like the integration point and the triggers and the things that happen in that system. So she says to me, she's like, well, do you want me to take you out of that school and put you into a school with kids who look more like you and with teachers who look more like you? And my mom will tell you to this day that I told her, I was like, no, because I'm going to have to work with them. So I might as well learn how to deal with them.
You're a little psychic. No, I'm gonna have to do this full time one day. Might as well start.
Go ahead,
But
hold
you
it.
know what? That is power.
Get the
I'm gonna start.
waterboard over with right now. Um, so so my mom, I stayed in the school, and my mom went up there and talked to the principal, had a strong talking to the teacher, all of that. And but my being educated by white educators, 99% of my life was very traumatic. Now that I will give you. I
I
had
didn't expect that answer.
less, less of less of the I didn't even have time to deal with what the children was spewing. I don't know what they was dealing. I don't know what they were saying, what they was doing, because my battle every day was with every teacher practically that I had. Well, one, the moment I stopped standing for the pledge, which was in the first
Oh
grade,
yeah, that's very
that put a
important in
mark on
Texas.
my, right, in Texas.
Because
Right.
then we had the Texas flag that was
Yeah, the
introduced.
Texas flag too. I was like, I'm not down with neither one of y'all. So I'm just gonna sit here and mind my business. And it wasn't like I was being disruptive. I just wasn't gonna stand. I wasn't trying to talk to nobody. I was minding my own little business. So that put a mark on my little. So every year it was a whole rigmarole around Natalie not standing. Let's go to the principal office. The principal be like, we already had this conversation with her mama, so please let her just mind her business in the class. All sorts of stuff. And because of that, I think that put a bad taste in the teacher's mouth. So then I became this target for their vitriol. And of course, me with vitriol, I mean, thank the Lord, his angel has come and taught me how to hold my tongue in special situations. But back then I didn't. So, for everything that you would, like a teacher would try to, like I'll give you an example. I remember we were watching Cleopatra in one year in one of these classes. And I was like, that is not an actual view of what Cleopatra, because it was, it was Elizabeth, whatever her name was. I was like, that's not what Cleopatra looked like. And I think that we need to go find a video or book that is a real depiction of Cleopatra, because it is not her. And so
I already know how that went down. I already know how that went down.
You go down and get it all. And so, it was always that back and forth and whatever. And so it was a struggle. And then I had, when I got to high school, I had a principal, and you know this person very well, and I cannot believe they let this person.
Slim Jim. We'll just call him Slim Jim.
Slim Jim. Slim Jim. That's a good, I like that. Let's call him that. So I'm in athletics, and you have morning practices and stuff like this. This was like ninth grade or something like that. And to keep my hair tied down, I would put on this pink bandana. This dude stopped me. Now I am in honors still. I graduated 8th grade with honors. I'm in honors classes in 9th grade, AP, all the stuff. He brought me to his office to ask me if I was gang affiliated.
This is high school or middle school?
High school. With a pink bandana. I'm like, what gang got a pink bandana, dude? This ain't no blood that got washed in bleach. What are you talking about? I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous. So these were my experiences. And so I didn't have much with kids. Like, it wasn't the interaction with kids. It was the adults that was a problem for me.
That's so interesting. Everybody's different perspective. I do remember I do remember I do remember very extremely ignorant occurrences when I think about the 80s in Mo City, and this is way before white flight. Because now, okay, because I went to that Fort Bend I went to this. How much can change in 30 years? I went to the Fort Bend YMCA with Gracie, and hadn't been in decades. And part of me didn't even know that little piece of trauma was there. Part of me was kind of bracing myself for. I was like, okay, just go in, show them
Right.
your card, because it used to be all white. It used to function as like a country club, right?
Yes.
What are you
Yep.
doing here?
Yep.
So I go in there. I don't see a lick of white. I see number black people everywhere. I
Yep.
was like, oh, times have changed. None but black folks in the pool swimming, black lifeguards, just
Mm-hmm.
blackity black. I was like, wow, wow, wow. So I say that to say that Most City, I remember in the early 80s and even into the early 90s, was that place where you were going to be followed by the cops, where you were going to be
Mm-hmm.
pulled over, um, it was a little white folks paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started integrating and moving that way, and I have to remember this, if you are a grown person in your 40s in the 80s, right, that means that you were born in the 40s.
Correct.
So that was a completely different generation. That was even, isn't that kind of almost pre-boomer?
That's the boomers.
That's the boomers? Okay.
Boomers.
So, and I learned there are lots of places in Texas that technically didn't, in Houston, that technically didn't integrate
Mm-hmm.
until the 80s, and then they could call integration if all your teachers were white. So the schools didn't really mix in a lot of places. So they still had that mentality, is what I'm saying.
Right.
It was very deep, it was very thick, it was very real. So I was able to be I had a very unique experience where I was able to be around, I could be around ignorant black folks and I could be around ignorant white folks.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those things are so dangerous. The only
Yes.
thing is, ignorant black folks usually don't get you killed, don't get you fired
Wait,
from your
no, I feel like
job.
they get you killed. They get you killed. Ignorant
Yes,
black.
they get you killed.
They get you killed. They get you killed. Ignorance on both sides can get you killed.
Well, let
Just
me put
by
it like
different
this.
hands.
I feel like let me be very specific. I feel like black folks have been so cornered like cattle, and we live in pockets. And so that ignorant mentality, you know where that is. Usually
Yeah,
it's over here, it's over
right.
here.
That's
And
true.
usually that type of ignorance has no power. You
That's
see what I'm
true.
saying? Has no power. But if you dare
Yeah,
go into a certain convenience store or a certain Family Dollar at a certain time, things get catchy.
right.
Um, but with white folks, you can be in a very rich neighborhood. And so I guess you could travel up the socioeconomic ladder
Right.
and still catch that kind of ignorance that costs you your life.
Yes.
So I feel like with black folks, you kind of have to know where it is, and you can really
Yes.
avoid it if you want to.
If necessary. Yes, that is true.
You can avoid it if you want to. And we loud, and you usually can see us coming. That's all I'm saying.
Loud. Loud.
Loud. White folks won't say nothing, but the cops will just show up.
They just show up and then you get shot. So yes, that is correct.
Those have been my
That's
experiences.
death.
So
Death by different circumstances.
yes, yes, death
Yes.
by different, same ignorance, but different circumstances.
Yes. Yes. Oh my
Yes, yes.
goodness. That just brought back
So,
all the things.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, it just brought back all the memories, all the things.
Oh,
Crazy.
it did. So as black women, as human beings, but definitely in this skin, in this body, as we shift from one place to another place, I do recognize those, or at least try to be most conscious and aware of those effects, um, with myself, and when I may be projecting them outward.
Mhm.
Um, Still shocked that there are people who are my age and younger who can be as ignorant and racist as they are, especially the white ones. I shouldn't be shocked, but I'm
I
like,
don't know why you're shocked about that.
because I'm like, we didn't grow up.
Yeah,
I
you
guess,
did. Because their parent, that's what we see. We talked about this last week, but that recording got dropped. So this, we talked about this last week. Your parents and my parents are the same age as the parents who were lynching people. back in the day. So, right, if your parent is 70 years old now, right,
Mhm.
in the 50s, they would have been like 10 or 5 or 10, depending on whether they was born in 40 or 45 or whatever. But in the 50s, they would have been between the ages of like 5 or 10 years old, potentially.
Right.
So they grew up around regular, if you is from the South,
Oh yeah.
right?
Their parents.
Their parents regularly lynched people, right? And I say regular, they tell me it's only like 5% of it. Okay, whatever. That's regular, period. Because that you can't go outside and look at nobody in the eyes. They grew up in an era where you can't look at nobody in the eye. You get lynched for looking at so or beat or drugged behind a truck or whatever the case may be, right? So that's them. Okay. So then they grew up having experienced that, the Black experience of fear, constant state of fear, and the white experience of constantly believing you are entitled to everything in the world, no matter what, with this inferior class of people, right? Then they had kids. So then your mom had you and my mom had me, right? And then that sense of entitlement didn't just go away.
So we had this grand social experiment of, okay, let's put everybody together and see if that solves it.
Which it didn't, it made it worse.
In some ways, did it solve?
No, it made it worse. I think it made it worse.
In what ways do you think it made it worse?
I think so by the nature of my profession, it is never great to throw a change across the fence and hope for the best.
Throw a
Like a
change?
change. Like anytime you get ready to change the way people interact, the way they do their jobs, the way they show up in a place, the way you can't ever just be like, throw that over there and then walk away from it. And that's essentially what they did when Ruby walked her little self up them steps, right? Um, that was a bad experience for everybody on all sides because that's not really how you go about with the change. Like you can't just throw people across and be like, great, you on your own, you in here, we right? Because people spitting on you for showing up. People don't want you to sit next to you, they don't want to be your lab partner. They don't like so now you're in a cone and sphere of isolation with hatred getting spewed at you. They're unwilling because you forced it on them, right? So they don't even want to hear your side. They don't even want to know that you might not be what their parents have been telling them for the last 15 years of their life before they got to 10th and 11th grade. They just are like, this person came and invaded my space. They didn't ask, whatever. That off top tells me that they're wrong because and I will forever say this forever and ever and ever. They took Blacks, got rid of their entire infrastructure, their schools and their teachers, and moved them to where they were. Nobody went the other way, right? It wasn't like, oh, we're going to integrate. So we're just going to do people zoned. So if you're within a 5 mile radius of this school, then you go here. If you're in a 5 mile radius of that, and then it ends up kind of organically blending however it's going to blend, except for the people who were in really wealthy neighborhoods, and that's still how it is today. So you so even in that, you reaffirmed the white people who were the receivers of you showing up at their classrooms to say they didn't even want us going over there because y'all stuff trash. So you must be trash. Y'all got to come over here. Now you're going to trash about stuff too. So the whole thing was traumatic and a problem for everybody involved.
Why have we never seen anything that talks about this part right here, like the failures of integration or what could have been and what could have been done instead, the reflection of that? Because I do hear my boomer parents saying, right, I think well, number one, there was apologies, like we didn't know that wasn't originally the plan. I think they got excited about maybe going into corporate America
Yeah,
and making
having
more money,
access. It's
having access, but it
access.
wasn't
Yeah.
their lived experience. But yes, I think they were excited about the access, about not drinking right at the Black water fountain. Um, I think everybody was caught up. Well, let me reel it back, because I also heard that media, just like today, started spinning the story into what it was supposed to be. I've heard lots of are able to say integration was never the point. We just wanted access and
Right.
resources
Right.
because we were taxpayers.
Right.
Right? We weren't trying to leave our stuff to go to your stuff.
Correct.
Um, but somehow, just like now, how somehow I'm named Gen X, right? They tell a story on top of you and things just start
Right.
going.
Right.
So I often ask, then what's next? We know that this is not working. We know this hasn't worked. We know this is a well, I'm not gonna say we know because some people won't admit it.
And some people
Um,
think it is not working. Some people think it's working great.
I guess if we look at the data, because I do speak in HISD, I am still currently employed at HISD, which is, in my opinion, turned into something horrible out of Hitler any day of the week. But maybe it was then. I've heard people before Houston was integrated. My parents are originally from Charlotte, so I heard before Houston was integrated HISD, you know, blacks had their infrastructure, they had their successes, they
Mhm.
struggled with resources, um, but they had their respect, had their dignity. But ever since integrations happened, these schools, especially predominantly black schools, have struggled
Right.
horrendously. So perhaps it's more of the same.
Right.
Um, but I say that because the data indicates, at least in this school district, which is the largest, the students are failing. Black and brown students, by a long shot, are failing. They don't read on um, grade level at our Title I schools, which are majority of the schools.
Right.
Um, so based on that data, yes, a lot of people are homeschooling. A lot of people have moved to these private charter schools, Harmony, etc. Yes, preps. Um,
Mhm.
they're moving into these other places, but I still think that that's if the answer can no longer be just going to college and getting a job or just going to work and just working. Like that's just not working anymore. That's not creating a whole human being. We're still too ignorant. You get your check, you go home, but you're still so ignorant in the faculties of life. I just don't know what the next solution is based on where people really are.
So I guess my question would be, when we ask about what the next solution is, what are we solving for?
Mm-hmm. You know what had me on fire? What had me on fire is when we start, because I was going to say entrepreneurship, but it really had me on fire and it moved a conversation with me and my mother, by the way. When you talked about, well, what do we own? What is true profit? What do we really own
Right.
from the ground up?
Right.
Um, and with that conversation, I took that conversation. I said, okay, mom, you own your land, your family owns your land, you own your voice, you own your you've paid off your pianos. Yeah. And I said, hey, can you do some music workshops on your land? You know, so it really pushed, instead of having the fantasy of, oh, I can buy this, and sell this, I would say the next conversation is ownership. Is ownership. What can we build? What can we create?
Okay. My only challenge to that is my challenge to, the same. It to me, when we talk about entrepreneurship and ownership and things like that, and you're probably, my guess is that you're thinking of bigger than just like a business. You're thinking about like ownership of home, of land, of mineral rights, of like all those things. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's the same thing that I would say to somebody who, on the flip side, talks about minimum wage workers and that, that's supposed to be jobs for high schoolers or whatever. And I'm like, so everybody can't be an owner, right? Like everybody can't own, right? Because somebody got to do the work, right? Period. Like, So everybody can't be the entrepreneur, right? Somebody's got to also help the entrepreneur achieve the vision that they want that business to be. In the same way that this notion that, minimum wage jobs supposed to be for high school people, I'm like, well, who working between the hours of 7 and 3? Who flipping your burger between 7 and 3? Because they in school. Oh, McDonald's shutting down now. What we doing?
Well,
So
no, I guess when I say ownership, I literally mean like the whole Black Wall Street concept,
right,
where you create your now I understand because I'm over here Memorial. You have Hedwig Village, right? You have the city within the city, and they own their own water and plumbing. Like I get it. We don't have that yet, right?
right,
We would still have to leech off
get
City of
there,
Houston,
right, right,
However, that would be the goal where we have our own community where you could work, you could clean toilets with somebody who maybe respected you and is part of your family.
right.
I mean, right? Isn't that the goal that if I
But
have
do
to clean
we?
a toilet,
But
huh?
do we? But do we? Have we succumbed to the, like I think that we have succumbed to the same kind of elitist mindset, right? You look at a person who cleans a toilet, or you look at a person who picks up trash, or you look at a person who went to a trade school, and as many Blacks who have, they got their little college degree and they in corporate whatever, and there's this look down, like look down your nose on somebody. And I think we've absorbed that mentality.
I think, well, if I look at social media and I hear these young girls,
Because they already said they ain't marrying a bus driver. We went through that a few months back, right? We're not down for the bus driver.
this is a whole nother. Okay, so I'm gonna do this in two chapters because this is really disconcerting to me.
For 2 years. Okay.
If you are full grown adult with a full grown matured mind, you understand that in your home, unless you can afford, and most of us don't earn, most of us in our income bracket are not doing this. This is why I'm so adamant about this. You clean your own toilet, hopefully, right?
Mhm.
Hopefully you clean in toilet, clean in showers. Most of us don't have maid service.
No, I do multiple times a
So,
week.
but that's not, Natalie, you don't represent the majority of
But
Black parents. Put your hand down.
I also pay my housekeeper very, very well. My housekeeper takes about $35 an hour.
You
So
do not
it's great.
represent Black America. Put your
Fine.
hand down.
Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Okay.
Keep your talented 10 hand down. I can't. I'm in a meeting in a little bit. Because that what that woman was talking about, God bless, and I know people start making money. But us parents here, right? Black women, if these stats still hold up, even though we are the quote unquote highest educated with these degrees, we're also the highest in debt.
Yeah.
Okay. We're still there's still 30% of us are still too close to the poverty line, if not on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Majority of us are single with our children, and majority of us have never been married.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some struggles there. So I
Mm-hmm.
say that because if we're the ones that need upward mobility, you clean your own toilet at home, and you clean somebody else's toilet somewhere else, and you doing it for less honor and less dignity. I understand that we as Black people have a hard time working with each other. I get that. I get that program. But if peace is the goal, if harmony is the goal, if people are honest with themselves, you can make $100,000 in this place of chaos, or you can make $60,000 where your blood pressure don't rise. And the older they get, they will learn what's the most value. And I think until we get to that place and understand that what matters to my soul is most valuable, then we're not gonna make it. Then we not going to make it.
So are you suggesting that there is an either or situation here? Are you suggesting that I cannot make the 100,000 in that place over there, um, learn how to manage my stress, right? Because there's no guarantee that if you make the 60,000, you're still not going to be stressed out. I give you Xavier.
Well, okay, but this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, and I don't know, I could just be in a different place where I don't want to manage certain things. I don't want to manage certain people. I don't want to be a certain
That's
environment,
fair. That's fair.
right? I'm not even interested,
That's fair.
right? That holds no value. I'd rather do what I have to do over here. Now, I may be wrong because you're saying, why can't I just have that over here in this place of peace,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think it's because of the mindset where I feel like I always have to sacrifice something or give up something.
But I think that's just the nature of the spiritual plane that we're on. I don't think any person will have it all. There will always be trade-offs, you know. It's the same thing with, there are always risks to anything that you do. You get in the car today, you drive down the street, there's a risk of an accident. You may not
Right,
return home, right?
right.
That doesn't mean that you don't get in the car and drive down the street, right? You try to mitigate your risks, like distracted driving, like, whatever, road rage, all the things. And
I guess
so
I'm saying if it's not my highest good, if it's not where I prefer to be, I mean, they took a poll years ago, 75% of people or more hate where they work.
that's true.
So, and don't have mutually beneficial relationships in that space. I think the dream is creating a space or being a part of a space that actually I enjoy being,
I
right?
do. I don't disagree with that. I do. Well, I mean, let me not say I don't disagree with that. I can see where you're going with it. So I see, so I certainly have coached my fair share of people who come to a session and say they are in their car and before they walk into their office building, they cry for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, you need to leave. Like, I don't know what, like,
That's what
if
I'm talking about.
anything, if my eye even missed from a client, I will fire you. Like, I'm not participating. So, so the things that people are willing to subject themselves to,
That's
but I don't think that, I, I don't think that leaving what is it, the frying pan into what's the little thing? You jump from the skillet to the frying pan, whatever. Anyway, going from one pot that's on the stove to another pot that's still on the stove, I don't think that cures that, right? I mean, there's a lot of uh there's a lot of people in this world, period. And it doesn't matter what color spectrum they fall on, whatever else, that for whatever reason feel the need to make it difficult for other people to do their jobs.
and okay, I'm gonna put an and on that. I still feel like there are spaces in which you can exact more control
Yes, you can.
because,
I agree.
right, not to say, well, the devil's everywhere, you go, right, which is,
Right.
I'm gonna say that, which is something that our community says a lot, right? Well, you
It
gonna
is
find it everywhere,
everywhere.
people everywhere. It is everywhere. However, there are degrees of it and there's measures of control that you can exact.
Definitely. Definitely. But
And
I don't
so,
think you have to trade I don't think if you value financial, whatever your version of financial success looks like,
right.
whatever it is, I don't think you have to trade that to get this thing. I don't
Oh, I
think it's
see what you're saying.
right. I don't think it's you make 100,000 here or 60,000 and suddenly you at peace. I don't think that's the case at all.
So
Right. Um,
I guess my ultimate lesson is, or my ultimate talk is, it's not worth trading, right, your peace, your source, or like you're saying, the stress, the whatever's the misting of the eye is not worth that money, whatever that space is. Like, if I have to subject myself to this in order to get this, or I think I do, that's not really worth it. But I feel like that's what the majority of us have been trained to do. And maybe it's not a money thing. Maybe it's just a relationship thing. We tolerate things that we shouldn't tolerate. And unfortunately, money's a part of this one.
Right. Right. I think it's just I think people struggle with creating boundaries. And I wrote a paper, a blog post on the notion of quiet quitting. And when it first started, and everybody was like, oh, you shouldn't quiet quit, and that's horrible for your employer. And I was like, quiet quitting is called boundaries. Like, I don't think, and this is the fault of, in my opinion, it's the citizenry's fault. So it's every person who is considered an employee. This is not the employer's fault. If you give a kid access to chocolate chip cookies or broccoli, more than likely they're going to eat the chocolate chip cookies, period. So that's what corporations are doing. They're eating the chocolate chip cookies, and you've allowed them to eat the chocolate chip cookies. Your job is a contract. I show up, I perform these services for you, Mr. Corporation or Mrs. Corporation, to the best of my ability, and I give you an excellent outcome for the things that I are in my purview. And in exchange for that, you pay me money.
Okay, can I stop you right there? Because this is really gonna get us canceled. It might even get me fired. Okay, can you say what your credentials are as far as change and what you're talking about?
My credentials are,
Yes, yes. I think people need to know what you do, what you're talking about, and what you're an expert in.
I mean, I'm a management consultant.
Yes. For
A lot of Fortune 100 companies are my clients. Yeah. A lot of Fortune 100. I have lots of changes, technology changes, merger and acquisition changes, onshoring, offshoring, culture shifts, the whole nine. If something is changing in a company, I'm probably in the midst to try to help people figure out what the heck is happening to them, why it's happening, when it's going to happen, what they need to do to get prepared for what's about to happen. Is that what you mean?
yes, and I say that because I'm gonna bring this in here. So, as an employee of HISD,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know if you've heard of what's going on in the news, but I think there's an objective way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is was taken over by the state TEA,
Mm-hmm.
and the new superintendent this year um, was a very tough year because we all signed a contract, and he proceeded to make changes on the contract that we signed. Now, I've since learned that teachers have no, if I'm correct, we have no true labor rights. Um, and he started to impose things that people thought were policy changes, but they were just emails. Okay. So you had a lot of groups of teachers, which you're saying about cookies. You had a lot of group of teachers um, who were going because by nature, a teacher is a soldier, right? And soldiers follow
Mm-hmm.
order. So
Yes.
let's put that out there,
Yes,
right? We're
yes,
government employees.
yep.
The difference between well, I'll just put it this way. So the hours increased. Um, teachers begin working. They didn't know they were working for free. Um, a lot of mandates he was making was being sued. You know, he's being sued by the union or so-called union. Texas really doesn't have unions. They could walk out. You know, can't really strike based on the contract. Um, I say that because by nature, by nature, the way things go, teaching is, as you know, is not a job that you get paid for technically, right? Most of the work and preparation happens outside of school because that was the culture of it. I've been a part of HISD for 3 years, and they will dock you by the minute. And I've never seen that before. You're not your salary, you're not really because they'll dock you by the minute.
Right.
Um, so we have these contracts. Teachers have gotten more work with the contracts. They've agreed. Well, let me stop that. It isn't part of their contract, a lot of the stuff, but they're agreeing to do it because they're afraid of getting fired from the job.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are working for free, and they may or may not know it, but they're working for free a lot of these extra hours. Um, so next year the salary is increasing dramatically for special needs and some of the teachers. Um, but we work for a superintendent who is not good at keeping his word, and so the policies can change by the week. You
Mhm.
really never know what's going on. Um, and by nature of you saying that we allow these corporations to do X, Y, and
Mhm.
Z because we don't have boundaries.
Mhm.
Because most of us don't like change. We don't
Well,
like change.
and most people are just bad at creating boundaries in general. That's why a lot of people are in bad relationships, why they got bad family dynamics, why they got like people are just bad at creating boundaries, right? People are constantly either willing to allow certain behaviors to happen so as not to rock the boat,
Mhm.
or because they feel safer with the devil they know than the devil they don't know. Like there's a lot of reasons, right, behind why people um don't set good boundaries. A lot of people like to be liked also. It's a huge thing. Likability. um and it's unfortunate. I do think there's a way to enforce and set boundaries with, and still maintain, not create tsunami waves, right? There are ways to do that. Um, but I think you first have to get comfortable and believe that you deserve to set the boundaries that you would like to set,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Because if your employer, no matter who they are, can keep having you show up for 80 hours a week and paying you for what is expected to be 40 to 45 hours, maybe 50 hours a week, but you keep giving them an extra 30 or 20 or whatever, who gonna turn that down? Most people are not going to turn that down. And so you have to set the boundary. And you also have to be willing to walk away.
Oh, that one. Be willing to walk away. So this is negotiation 101 right
Yeah.
there.
Yep. You gotta be willing to walk away. Because again, it's all veiled threats. I mean, and that's like, I don't have no children, but I feel like that's like parenting 101. If
It
every time
is.
you threaten your kid with something that they don't do it, and then the threat never comes through, well, then I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because I keep my phone, I'm not grounded, I got my car, I'm not whatever, like all like so why would I alter my behavior in any way, shape, or form when there's been no consequence, positive or negative, right? No consequence to my action, right? Because you could say, "Hey, Natalie, make sure you fix your bed every morning." You could threaten to beat me, or you could say, "Hey, I'll give you $5 for making your bed," right? Whatever it is, right? But if you don't
Mhm.
give me the $5 and you also don't beat me, then I'm like, okay, well, I can obviously I just keep leaving my bed unfinished.
So,
Right.
no, I love that because at the end of the day, it's about the agreements that we make, no matter what situation we're in. It's about the agreement we make and the ability to say, okay, this is not working for me, and you either agree with it or you walk away from it, and then it's done.
Yep.
So, but you're right. That is a very likability, right? Fear, like all of those things is what keeps us in place. What kind of brings me to what I think we touched on this a little bit um about Kanye. Kanye, to me, I mean, I'm bringing up Kanye because I think about Harriet Tubman, and I'm just so amazed that whatever the culture was, she was like, yeah, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
Like this is not working for me. Um, and I'm sure, right? They threatened her and said all kind of things about there and tried to kill, right? All those
Sure,
things.
sure, sure, sure. Hunted and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
But she made her boundaries. And so what is it about us as a people? It's very difficult to take that responsibility that you're talking about, basically taking responsibility for defining our needs, being able to advocate for ourselves and walk away if it's not lined up with what we need. That's very rare,
Hmm.
maybe with people, but especially as Black women.
I think a lot of it sometimes is driven by the fear of the unknown, right? You just don't know what's on the other side, right? And then you start to probably ask, and trying to put myself in somebody's shoes and like in the shoes because there are mindsets that I just don't understand. I don't have the
I
mind.
know, and I'm so amazed by
I just don't have the
so
mind.
amazed by that because I'm here like little, I'm like I put my head up my fear hut, you know,
I mean,
and
there are
you just
plenty of things
got
that
that.
I probably need to adjust and fix and whatever else, but there are lots of mindsets that I see in people wearing them, and I don't understand, and I try to put myself in the situation to try to understand or ask them to give me some insights into the understanding, to get some understanding. But at some, it's almost like why people run away from home. Now, granted, there are some people who run away from home for lots of nefarious reasons, right? But there are also people who run away from home because they are like, I don't care what is on the street out there, it is better than whatever is happening to me inside of this home. Period. Right? And I'm sure they get out there and it is hallelujah rough, horribleness. Um, but at some point, right?
Have to get to that point.
You've got to get to the point where you are just like, whatever's out there, I'm just gonna deal with it. And I can, the interesting thing is to me is that no matter what, so even in the example, the person who runs away from home, there is still the ability to pivot, right? Like it's not like you make a decision and then that decision is forever, right? Like it's not like it's forever. Short of you making a decision that ultimately ends in you losing your life, that is very final. That's very final. But short of those types of decisions, right? You you have the right to change your mind. You have the right to revisit a decision, to change whatever course you thought. There are 10 gajillion, bajillion, bajillion decision trees out there for you to make.
I think just hearing you talk, I'm like, wow, you have always presented as like I don't the way you were raised, I believe that that whole autonomy piece has been instilled in you, has been a foundation for you. And I'm like, I can tell that this woman was loved. I can tell somebody loved you, girl. I can
That's hilarious. I think it was very much so nurtured. I do think there's a part of you that is like spirit essence from the beginning, right? Like you think about Harriet Tubman. I don't know if anybody loved her. Like, my mama used to give me hugs and rub my feet and all this. Like, I don't know if anybody's out there doing that for Harriet Tubman. But at some point, Harriet was still like, God darn it, we getting out of this joint because
I think it's spirit infused, but it's just
right,
so interesting because I'm like the choices that you have. Like I understand what you're saying because I've worked very hard to get this one. I think I started with the mindset, then it was beating out of me, and then I'm getting back to the mindset.
that happens. That happens. That does happen. That does happen. It does happen. It
You
does
trying to
happen.
be free, ain't nobody free. You know, um, which unfortunately, is a lot of us women. Men, I'll leave you to yourselves, but it's a lot of us women. But that is very empowering to be reminded that these are choices that we're making. These are choices that we're making, and I think, well, from my experience, if you've been in a very abusive, controlling environment, then the trauma says that it's generalized, right?
Right.
This is just the way it is. And that's the saying, right? It's the way it is, it's life.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. It's
You
true.
paint that over everything. But it's just simply a lie. It's simply a mindset
It
to
is.
work out of and to walk out of. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that's why we have so much in our tent because we've been traumatized. A good bit of us have been traumatized
Oh
in some.
yeah. All of us. I'm fully convinced that we've all been traumatized. All in some way, shape, or form.
Some more, some R. Kelly-ish, some P.
Yeah.
Diddy-ish.
Yeah, different ones. And I think to your point about the tent, I think that is why I think we're all trying to um we're all trying to find the voices that resonate. And so, because of that, we allow anybody into the tent because we think that they see us. right? We
Oh,
think
wait, say more
that
about that. What do you mean?
they see us. We think that we can identify, that we share a collective experience together. And so because of that, come on into my tent, right? But in reality, on the surface, you may share a surface experience together, but when you dig deeper, the characteristics and traits of that are very different, right? So we end up with a lot more people in our tent who don't really share what we've shared, what we have.
Are you talking about, and maybe this is a conversation for next time. Are you talking about our experiences as Black Americans versus
Everybody,
other Black folks?
everybody
Everybody.
versus everybody, right? Versus everybody. Because we literally, I mean, seriously, we really told Bill Clinton he was the first Black president. Because he could play a goddamn saxophone,
I remember that.
and because he was unfaithful, because they were like, he's so charismatic and he liked women and all that. We told that man he was our first Black president. That's what we told him. That's the tent increasing by somebody who don't have your shared experience.
When you talk about shared experience, then you might as well throw Obama. You might as well throw our
Oh
vice
yeah,
president.
everybody, everybody, all the people, all the things. So yeah, so our little big tent, it just keep growing and growing and growing.
But
And
not benefit.
your needs keep getting missed and missed and missed.
So what do you think about what Cube's doing? He's getting a lot of flack.
The big three?
I don't know, because remember, well, presidential wise, remember last presidential cycle? I don't know what he's doing now, but last presidential cycle, he was trying to go directly and ask questions. They were like, we have a system for that. Psh, psh, messing it up. We've already Ice Cube. Remember your place. Like,
And they were like, sit down, boy. Remember your place. You ain't supposed to be over there talking to them. Um,
gatekeepers or whatever. But
they
but
are.
yes, I think we I try not to get hopeless when it comes to what we do as a people and how we've chosen to survive, how we felt like we've had to survive. It kind of keeps us in a cage. Um, because of likability, I think older generations, you have to be liked in order to live.
You do. It was a survival mechanism. If somebody didn't like you, they could take your life right then and there.
Right then and
Right
right
then and
there.
there. Which is also why I say the essence of the spirit, because the Lord knew that if he had dropped me in here in like 1872, Natalie probably wouldn't have lived very long. He was like, girl, I need you to make it past 30. Hold on. And go, it's not your era. One moment. Please hold for another 150.
Well, no, yeah. I don't know about your dad, but I definitely watched my, I call it shuck and jive. I've watched him do some things that I'd be like, how do you have any dignity? But I realized it was a survival mechanism
Mechanism.
for him.
Mm-hmm.
Try to make it home or try to and it wasn't until a mentor of mine literally said he grew up in Mississippi, and I said the burning Mississippi. He was burning Mississippi.
It's
He
burning.
literally reminded me that. Well, no, I didn't even realize it. Honestly, he said it was nothing for a white man to come into your home uninvited,
Oh,
open the
yeah.
door, walk in, call your grandma by her first name, get some
Yep.
food from the stove,
Mm-hmm.
sit himself down just because he could.
Yep.
And I
Yes.
was like, he could do that just because he could. He said he could kill you if he wanted to,
That is
and no
correct.
bad or
And
not.
no one would bat an eye.
So, and this is the living generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
These
still hear
people are
him
alive and still in the workforce.
still in the workforce. Yeah. So, I feel like we have a long way to go, but we're not where we used to be. But sometimes it feels like we're worse off.
You know, like I back to my initial statement, there are trade-offs to everything.
There are trade-offs to every.
Trade-offs to everything.
What? Any last words to what is working? What do we think is working? What is working?
You asking me?
Well, let me
talking to
say
me.
this. This conversation, number, I think the ability to self-reflect, I don't think was available um in the way that it is now when we were growing up as kids. Um, we have been through the system, the education system, and we have survived.
People were self-reflective because I distinctly remember my mom saying, she as she grew up and like she made the decision when her and my dad got married that they were going to have children and they planned their kids out and all this other stuff. And that was self-reflective, the planning of kids, right? And her thing was that my response to my kids not behaving in the manner in which I believe that they should be behaving is not going to be to beat my children, right? So that was self-reflective, right? That was, I remember how that made me feel when I was a kid to get whoopings. So I'm not going to do that to my kids, right? There's got to be a better way, right? In navigating. And again, these are all choices, right? Choices people make. And she could have started down that path and then decided her kids were out of control and she needed to beat them. She can make that decision too, right? So she didn't, thank goodness, but she could, right? So um so and my dad was a military guy, so he was more of like a disciplinarian military style kind of person, but but neither one of them was like they really understood and really spent like were consciously aware of their upbringing and parts of their upbringing that they wanted to bestow upon their children and parts of their upbringing that were a lesson to teach their kids as to what not to do. Right. So I don't know. I think there was some self-reflectiveness. I know my grandmother definitely had a lot of self-reflection about how she chose to raise her kids. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all the things because she was just like, well, if God didn't want me to be pregnant, I wouldn't be pregnant. I was like, nope, everybody go sleep in another room, buddy, because we are at 17 right now. We are not trying to climb to 18.
Okay, well, that's an improvement because
Right?
we don't have that no more.
Right, right. So, I mean, I think there was some self-reflection. I think so. Maybe not as deep and as verbal
The verbal part. There you go.
as we are now. Right? Because everybody is on some social media platform declaring their trauma and how they healing through somatic experiences and like all right, all the things, right? And that wasn't something that was really done. Right. You can certainly reflect on it, but we're not carrying that out into the openness.
Right,
Right.
right, right. Yes, we don't air out families'
The
dirty
family.
laundry. Right.
Right. Right.
Yes. I do believe accountability systems for some groups of people are a little bit higher. I don't know what all the intention is sometimes, but um I do like the fact that everybody knows they're not supposed to say nigga to me. Like even if it happens, that's a big right. That's a big there's other creative words, but still I think just
Rather
little things
them
like
say
that. What'd you say?
wouldn't you rather them say it to you though? I would rather you confront me with the term. That way,
I want them to squirm. I want them to have one thing that they, because they just want to say, just want to say, and I'm like,
I just am like, wear your colors, child. I liked when you had a hood on. That way, just don't cover your face. I need to know who you are in the hood. I need to know who you are dropping the N word. I need to know, like, I need all these things. That way, I know how to deal with you. But right now, it's just real subversive.
oh, so you don't like the indirect? You rather than be direct?
Yeah, I need you to be direct. Just be like, hey, little N, I want you to do this job really good. So come on over here and do this job. Cool. I know who I'm dealing with. But you're so articulate. The way you present is so, I've never seen anything like this before. I'm like, you go watch a goddamn TED Talk somewhere. So
So
yeah,
you like the direct? Okay, okay. I like the fact that's the one thing that you can't do without having
Some repercussions.
repercussion. Like that's just the one thing. Just one. And it's hard for you to get that. Like why can't I do this one thing? This is
I
my one.
know.
So yeah. So I actually enjoy the squirming, but I don't know. I would like to think that, and maybe it has nothing to do with culture now I think about it, but I would like to think that there are more allies that are brave enough to come forward than there used to be. I think one thing I didn't consider, my mom used to say this all the time, I get so mad. I didn't realize until very later in life that a lot of white folks face some serious
Oh,
consequences
heck yeah.
when they don't think like the hive.
That is correct. That's
So I appreciate those that are brave enough to stand up and be advocates.
right.
I think that's a big change that perhaps they can find some relief in social media when they call their own people out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I didn't realize that was such an issue within their own hive.
Oh goodness, yeah. It's like during the it's because it's late. My words have left. I have no more use for the English language at this point in time. The bus, not the voting thing where they were registering people to vote back in like the 60s,
Yeah,
like that. And the white kids who were on there trying to help register kids to vote, like they caught it. They caught it just like the black kids.
it's pretty cool to
You get to die too.
that's pretty cool to see because I don't see that aired as much on social media or media, how we're working together for a common goal. I would like to see more of that on media. And maybe it is, maybe it's not my algorithm. But that's my excuse for everything. Maybe it's not my current interest. But I think that is progressive. I think that is progressive. But I still think what Alice Walker said in Womanist Prose, I feel like we black women have never had our movement. I
Oh, no,
feel like we've never had our women's movement. We never had our human rights movement, and we have a long way to go. We are not there in mindsight, not like we should be.
we're not. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, supposedly maybe we can kick some people out of the tent and focus on what our needs are. I believe that's
Excuse me,
my
that would be great. Let's kick some people out the tent. I'm all for kicking people out the tent. I'm not saying I won't see you when I leave the tent. Like, when I go out, leave the tent, we can hang out and go coffee, lunch, all the things. But in the tent,
I think we need to define our quality circle. We need to make some serious boundaries.
yes, which we've talked about earlier, and that's hard for people.
Boundaries for our tent. Okay. Well, on that note, I think both of us are over 40 and it's past our bedtime.
Job, way past. But this is great. I love it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so thank you. Until next time, we will be discussing who we need to kick
We need to kick out the goddamn tent, okay?
out, and it could be your daddies,
It
okay?
could be.
Baby daddies especially, but it could be. Oh, that's a good one next time. Who
We
the
might.
and your baby daddy? Because I got two of them, so we gonna talk about this.
We can talk about it. We talk about it. I don't have any because I have no children, but I have opinions. I definitely, I'm no shortage of opinions. Zero shortage of opinions. Okay. Okay.
Baby daddies in a big black tent. That's too many bees. Baby daddies in the big black tent. Ooh, that's gonna
God,
sure
that's
get us
so hilarious.
canceled. Ooh, it's gonna be some Kevin Samuel fans that are mad at us.
Oh my God, that's hilariousness. I can't wait. I can't wait. This is awesome size. Good. Gonna be good. All right. Well, until next time, right?
Till next time, blessed be.
Bye.